Okay, in this little tutorial, I'm going to build a sample how to mask data in WebFOCUS for reporting, but as well for data migrator for load flow. So no matter what you're going to do with the data, we're going to hide it. So let's open up my data set. So I already got my master data. So I got my information. There's my personal records. Actually, what I want to do in here, I got a bunch of information, but I want to hide the email address from reporting. So to do so, I'm going to pick up my email address and I'm going to add an expression, a function. Actually, I'm going to do a advanced expression. So my favorite one for hiding anything here or masking something is usually under data source and decoding. So I'm using the patterns functionality, and I'm going to use my email address as described before. So adding the pattern, now that's the pattern for the email address. I'm going to use masked email as a name for my new field. I'm going to stick with the format. I'm going to keep it. And there we go. So instead of our email address that we have in here as clear text, we now get a masked version. So it's just replacing any character with a character and numeric information with the numeric sign here. So the placeholders as well as the @ which stays intact in here. So you're going to see it's an email address. So to make sure nobody else is able to see the email address, I'm going to use the email address field in here. So in the properties, I'm going to use the capability in here to actually set that one to be internal only. So I got a bunch of settings in here, one of them here being internal. So I'm setting it to internally. Okay, applied. So now I'm going to save it. So I've got my email address still visible in here and my mask email address. But if I do some sample data in here, I'm going to see the data and the email address is disappeared, but the masked email address is still around. So whoever is now using that table for whatever reason, that's going to be quite easy to do. So done, changed it, close it now. So here's my retail customer file. Remember that one. So if I do sample data, I see my data, I see my mask data, and whenever I build a report, I'm only going to have that mask email address in here. I could also, of course, go back to that folder in here. So I'll go to my file panel, right-click that one, and I can now build an ETL flow using WebFOCUS Data Migrator. So take the flow. There's my table, and now I can tell the system I want to put that one into a new table. I'm going to pick it up now, load option, and I'm going to load it into a SQL Server. It's going to give it a new name, SQL. That's the table name. I'm going to use the bulk load capability. Going to load the file, click OK, and run the load job. So now I'm taking the data from my hyperstage data source, putting it into my SQL Server. So load process is running. So in the meantime, let's go to my SQL Server, open up my SQL Server tools. As you saw in the meantime, it was loading my data. So it loaded 3.7 million records. So no, 300,000, sorry, it's 300,000 records, but still a certain amount of data. And it put it into my folder in into my database in SQL Server. So if we go back to SQL Server, let's wait for SQL Server to start up. And in the meantime, let's take a look at the folder. So I got my elements in here. So we can, of course, save my load flow. So I'm going to be able to reuse it later on. Close all the windows in here. So I don't need that one anymore. I don't need that one anymore. Let's clean up a little bit in here. So I don't need that one. So now I got it in here. So if we refresh my folder in here, there's my flow. Of course, I can always open up that folder to use it later on. Here's my SQL Server table. So it's in there. So we can do sample data. It's loaded into SQL Server, including my mass email address. If we move back to that folder, there we go. of course, let's open it up. That's my actual master file. So if I'm going to go to properties in here, you're going to see it's now in SQL Server. It's stored in SQL Server. It's going to be available in SQL Server. So if we go back to my SQL Server instance, open it up. No, I'm not going to do an update now, but I'll go to database. I think I put it into test tables, and there's my retail customer load. Get some rows from the database. So there we go. There's my masked email address, and I got my masked email address stored. That changes, of course, not just for ETL or loading purposes. So if I close that one up here, and of course I can, same way that I used it to load the data, I can now easily start in here and tell the system I want to create a report now using WebFOCUS reporting capability. So using WebFOCUS Designer to load the data. So I can now pick the data from the newly created SQL server because it's already persisted in there. But I can also go to my initial thing. So that's the SQL Server version of my data. But actually, I want to go for the initial version, the one where I use the virtual field, so it's not persisted. So I can select it. So even in here, that data is not stored somewhere. It's just a virtual field defined in that master file level. But whenever I start reporting in here, and I put something like, let's put it as a group in here. So it's going to be a quite long list. I should have used a filter maybe to limit the amount of data we're pulling, but as you see in here, I put it in the horizontal sort field. Actually, I wanted to put it into the rows, not into the columns. It's going to make way more sense. So let's put it in the rows. And as you see, there's no email field existing anymore. There's just those email addresses, those masked email addresses that are going to allow me to do reporting without seeing the email address. And it was quite easy, simple to mask data effectively in WebFOCUS. Of course, you could do the same thing for other type of fields. Quite easy way, simple and effective to build those type of data masking based on the master data level.